I cannot remember. No, it's not true because I have memories even when I was a baby in my crib. I'm strange like this. I really have memories as a baby. So I do have sort of the first memory of Pastoral Symphony, Karajan, Berlin. My parents had this record. They were listening to a lot of music, my parents, but all different things. French chanson, some more disco, and some classical, some Mozart, Beethoven, Bach. And so I remember I was very exposed very early with it. My first contact with Bernstein was as a collector of orchestra recordings. So when I became really interested in conducting, and that was very early, I was 10 years old when I decided I wanted to become a conductor. So every time I was making music in the weekends, in churches, you know, when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I started to buy recordings. I would go on the weekend in a record store, you know, when those existed. And I would buy CDs. One of the first CD I bought was Bernstein conducting the Wiener Philharmoniker in the Brahms Fourth Symphony. I knew nothing about Bernstein, but I loved immediately the interpretation, the passion. And then I started reading about Bernstein, and for me, he was only a conductor. That's the funny part. For years, I thought Bernstein was a conductor, and that's it. I learned later about his composition, and when I fast forward, when I started to really make career in the United States, especially in Philadelphia, then I noticed that every American considered Bernstein much more like a composer than a conductor. And here we are already talking about what makes him so special, you know, the life of the conductor, composer, the pianist, and the teacher, and all at once. And this is what this film is about. But I think I was inspired really very much. And to this day, I can say maybe he's my biggest influence as a conductor. Well, it's true that the greatest composers like, you know, Mahler, Schoenberg, you're talking about them, or, you know, we can say then Prokofiev, or we can say even Messiaen, or they're all been really influential. But what sets Bernstein apart is his blending of all these genres and how much he understood that for being a musician was about creating bridges, was about being able to be a virtuoso in Cuban music and Puerto Rican music as much as film music for Hollywood, and as much as liturgical Hebrew music and piano. And I think that all that Bernstein was about showing that music was not just one thing, was not small boxes. And we still, in the 21st century, have a tendency of putting things in small categories. And I feel like my mission, and the mission of many people, I think, in this time, in the 21st century, is to break boundaries and stop this categorizing. And he was not accepted in his time because of that, because that was really visionary. Take a work like Mass, for example. The fact of having rock music and having jazz in it and having choral music and a cappella and then completely atonal music. Nobody knew what this was. They thought it was a salad or a melting pot. But actually, this is now what we are doing. I think we are embracing, putting all of this together, also in his way of educating, in his way of talking to children and influencing a generation in television to get them interested and passionate, most importantly, about music. I believe that composers always live in the wrong era. This is sad, but a composer is reflecting what's happening around them, and yet they're always more understood later. If they're great geniuses, you know, how many works that we today consider milestones, cornerstones of our repertoire have had really good reviews when they came in? Almost none. They were always like, oh, it's catastrophe, it's terrible. And then 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, all of a sudden, oh, we understand. Mahler is a great example. Rachmaninoff, now we are 150th anniversary of Rachmaninoff. Now everybody's accepting Rachmaninoff. Even when I was a kid, Rachmaninoff was like, oh, this is just salon music. Or, it takes time. When you're a genius, I guess you shoot for the stars. You shoot for the future. And yes, I'm sad for the person that he lived in the wrong era, but I just think it's part of being such a wonderful visionary artist. So Bradley is an amazing person, an amazing artist. He did a good 6 years on research on Bernstein, on music, on orchestras and rehearsals and how it is. You know, Bernstein as specifically the conductor, the composer, but also in general, his research was to see how it is to be in those shoes. And he met a lot of people, but when we met, we connected very much and on many levels. And I think that the connection was because he could see that perhaps I was the right person to help him understand further how to retain the real emotional way of conducting of Bernstein whilst giving him technical assurance. And he was I can't say I taught him. In a way, yes, but I prefer to say coach to him because he made a lot of work himself, watching the videos of Bernstein. But of course, he got all the emotion and he wanted to stay in that emotion, which was very important. If you are to put Bernstein on film, you cannot, when you conduct, give the impression that you're very strict and reserved. You know, you need to be all in the big emotional, physical attitude of the conducting. But still, I needed to coach him as where's the downbeat is there and the second beat is up and the third is out and all of this. So I had to find ways of coaching him to leave him free as an actor and yet believable to the eyes, because he was committed to this. He wanted to be believable. He wanted that every classical musician would go in the movie and say, oh yeah, that works. This is Bernstein and he does the right beats. You know, what's interesting about this soundtrack is that most of the pieces have been recorded in studio, the Air Studios in London, with the London Symphony, with me on the podium. But when I was conducting, Bradley was next to me or in the booth, and between each takes we would discuss together about getting the right interpretation to be very much like Lenny and supporting the film. And sometimes he would talk to the orchestra himself, so it was very much a collaborative effort. And what we hear on the soundtrack of Bradley conducting is actually the scene at the Mahler 2 at the Cathedral, or the scene where we see him actually conducting in the movie because he did it for real. And those scenes, I was sometimes in his ear, so to accompany in his conducting, or I would rehearse just before and he would be next to me. So it's very much a collaborative effort. Like, it's very special to listen to it, even for myself, even though I was part of the secret. Honestly, I really would love to still be around that world. Of course, the reason why I was involved, and not only in this film actually, there's also another movie I was involved at the same time, a Canadian film about a woman conductor, a young woman, and it was with my Orchestre Métropolitain playing live. So I had also to teach this fantastic actress, Sophie Desmarais, there. But honestly, I did it just to serve classical music, or serve the purpose of getting our art form to be better known and to be more, interest some people. You know, Bradley was talking about it all the time. He said, young people who've never heard classical music, and they go and they watch the movie because it's Bradley there, and they hear Mahler 2, and they hear all the great Bernstein tracks. I mean, how could they not be at least curious? Well, I mean, I think it's good to have ways of describing an art form or an artwork. There was music that's more about theater, music that's more continuous, music that's more like a flowing thing, music that is more in vignettes and scenes, then that's only in the realm of opera. But I agree with you. I think that we should not refuse to do something because it's supposed to be that category. Another good example of this is singers themselves. You know, we're in the Metropolitan Opera now, so we talk about singers a lot. And from all times, remember Maria Callas, Carmen? Oh, terrible, you know, what a terrible thing to have a soprano sing a mezzo role. But if it works for her, even that category, I feel, doesn't exist anymore that much. So in the same breath, I just think let's value artists for who they are, make the choice of interpreting this or that, as long as they have a message to say and they have something to tell. I'm far from thinking that I'm similar to Bernstein in any way. First, I'm not composing, but of course he does influence me in my way of reaching to people. And I hate to say only the young people, it's not true, but just people who are outside our world because they feel that they're not welcome. They feel that it's for someone else. Because we projected for so long an image of being very exclusive. Oh, if you didn't study music, you won't understand what we're talking about. And I think it's wrong, I think it's false. I think you can always live something when you're in a concert hall or you're listening to music at home, even if you don't know anything. And if you study and you know more, then you're going to understand other layers. But it's true for every artwork. It's true even for cuisine. You go to a restaurant, you don't need to know how to cook to appreciate a good meal, right? So I think that's my passion, and this is why we work a lot, and I work tirelessly with my institutions also to vary the repertoire, still play the composers that we've been playing for centuries, but also open our stage to realities which people can see themselves more. Communities that didn't see themselves on the stage. We're opening this Florencia en el Amazonas now. It's the first time we have an opera dedicated to Latin American people, all with a cast that's almost exclusively from Mexico or from Latin America in general. It's about time, and you know, for the black composers that we present on our stage now, this is new, and I'm not proud to say it's new, but I'm proud that actually we're making steps now to correct this this reality, and hopefully people are just going to relate more to the art form that we're doing. Oh, I think it's going to take a while before people stop associating a conductor with someone old. Someone, but there's a reason for that, by the way, but someone really that's only male and that's only white and preferably European. So even in Maestro movie, there's this scene where for Bernstein it was a struggle because he was told that to an American they would never give an orchestra, to a Jewish man they would never give an orchestra, imagine. And it's not so long ago, it's not even 100 years ago. The reason why also we associated with old is because I'm blessed with a profession where we don't retire. Every day I wake up, now I'm 48, and I think I'm half the age of Herbert Blomstedt. So that's amazing. I can become, finally, maybe in 40 years, maybe I'm going to be happy with some performance that I make. No, but seriously, it's a never-ending thing. We are never satisfied as musicians. It's not only conductors. I think it's everyone, singers, instrumentalists, everyone in music. It's built in that we want to become a better version of ourselves. Now, what's also important is to see that on the podium, a good conductor, in my opinion, is someone who's authentic. I think clarity for musicians comes with authenticity. If we believe in the ideas we have, if we believe in our interpretations, you cannot be authentic if you're always acting like this authoritarian white person. I think authenticity has different shapes and sizes, and it has different genders, and it has different colors. And that's why it's such a refreshing and beautiful era where when I teach, I see more and more young women wanting to be on the podium. When we present on stage and when we go in schools, we try also to get people from all different backgrounds and communities and colors to be interested in music. And I think this is only going to enrich our music world. And sometimes I feel like our classical music world feels threatened by it. And I would say the more it feels threatened, the more I feel like we're doing the right thing, because we're not trying to displace anyone. Welcoming people to the party doesn't mean that you have to throw the others out. It's just more people, the more the bigger the community of classical music will be, the greater it will be.